Marko here from Fair Realty, Victoria, BC. Today, I'm going to talk about frustrated buyers in a buyer's market. How does this work? It's a bit counterintuitive. In a buyer's market, typically you have high inventory, so lots of choice, slow sales, very few multiple offers out there. There's often downward price pressure or prices have come down substantially. Why would a buyer be frustrated in such a marketplace? Shouldn't they be happy that they're a buyer in a buyer's market? And it comes down to human nature. The market could drop 50%. Buyers would adjust their expectations and they would still make offers lower in relation to asking price. I saw a great post by a frustrated buyer on Reddit on the Toronto housing thread, and it reads, "Every offer we've put in gets rejected and the house eventually gets delisted. Kind of a rant, just frustrating experiences with buying as we're in the market. We've seen some pretty decent properties throughout the GTA. The problem is that we'd give offers, get a counter that is 60 to 90,000 higher than we feel. So I'm assuming 60 to 90,000 higher than what the buyer feels the property is worth. We renegotiate and then the seller would say no and we move on. Fine, I get it. But the annoying thing is that I'd keep an eye on these places that we've put offers on, and 83% would be delisted. So the seller would take the property off the market. The other 17% would sell, I'm assuming for a higher price than what this buyer offered. And so this buyer is frustrated, and I don't often see smart comments on Reddit, but the first reply that has over 200 upvotes, so people like it as do I, reads, "Just like you don't need to buy, these sellers who delist don't need to sell. It's that simple." And it literally is that simple. It's basically the definition of the market. The seller can't force you to pay what they want, and you can't force the seller to keep their house on the market and lower it to a price point that you want. That's how markets work. Here in Victoria, there's very, very few sellers that absolutely have to sell. Currently, I have 10 listings. 4 of the 10 are downsizers. 2 of my clients want to sell and downsize into smaller single-family homes. And 2 of my clients' sellers want to sell and downsize into condos. But out of the 4, all 4, fortunately, are in good health. Out of the 4, no one has to sell. They want to sell. And out of the 4 listings, on 2 of them, we've had offers that did not come together as my sellers felt it just wasn't enough to make the transition to a smaller property happen. And coming up here around Christmas, we're going to delist a couple of these. Maybe we bring them back in the spring, maybe we don't. But the point is, these people don't need to sell. They want to sell, but they don't need to sell. Very, very few sellers actually need to sell. And then when you have very few sellers that need to sell, when they are motivated, even in a buyer's market, there's enough buyers out there when one of these motivated sellers drops to a certain point. Often in a buyer's market, you can get into a multiple offer situation as the buyer because all the buyers are focusing in on the best deal. So let me give you an example. If there's a building complex and there's 5 units listed and 4 of the units are listed between $525 and $575 and they're all kind of similar. And then you get a 5th seller and they're motivated and they drop their asking price down to $499. If there's buyers looking, why would a buyer go offer on the one that's priced at $575 or $550? The buyers are going to focus in on the one that's priced at $499 and they'll make an offer on the one where they see the best value. And sometimes as a buyer in a very slow market, it can be a bit frustrating because it is a slow market, but you make an offer and then someone else is making an offer and you're thinking as the buyer, how is it possible in a slow market where very few things are selling and there's all this inventory, how is it possible that I keep getting into multiple offer situations? It's because buyers are focusing in on those motivated sellers, or they're focusing in on nice properties. You have properties that are unicorns in terms of they're key ready, they're in great locations, and when they hit the market, even in a slow market, because it's a bit of a unique product, you can often get multiple offers. But once again, I really love this reply. Just like you don't need to buy, these sellers who delist don't need to sell. It is what it is. If you're a buyer, I think it's important to be patient, don't get frustrated, and try to find that seller that has to sell. Maybe it's an estate sale, maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's a job transfer. Someone wanting to downsize from their 3,000 square foot house into an 1,800 square foot house that's not in a particular hurry is not going to be super motivated. You also have to keep in mind a lot of sellers in Victoria don't even have a mortgage, so they're not under any sort of financial stress either to sell. That's it for this week. Marko, Juras, Fair Realty.